Hello, Haley Jefferson. How are you, my love?
I'm great, Maddie. How are you?
Good, good, good. I don't know why I insist on full naming you. It's a thing now. Um,
We do introductions with full names. Hi,
full
Maddie
names.
Cook. Excited to be
Thank you.
here.
Excited to have you on my talk show.
Yes.
I thought I really loved last week's episode, and because it's beginning of
Yes.
the year still, I was really pondering on what we were talking about doing your future self a solid, and when you were talking about writing the letter to yourself, and you obviously do some
Mm.
very brilliant work around burnout. We
Oh, my
do
favourite
understand
topic.
boundaries, but this is totally your jam. So I thought we could maybe start off the year, because we're still at the beginning of the year, with a bit of a how to beat burnout in 2024. Does that
I
sound
would
good?
love nothing more than talking about burnout. Honestly, I could
Yay.
talk about burnout just endlessly. Endlessly. It's one of my
Never
favourite
ending.
topics. It's never
You need to write
ending.
a book, by
What
the
it,
way.
You're not the first person to say that to me, Maddie.
Should.
I'm more of a
Watch
podcasty
your space.
person.
Can someone transcribe everything that we've ever said, please?
From voice notes, please. If I could
Yeah,
write it on voice notes, I'll write a book.
I'm sure that's a
That's how
thing.
that works.
So that's the jam. And I think first of all,
Right.
like we see, like the word burnout is floating around, and it becomes one of those words where maybe it loses its meaning or it gets a different meaning assigned to it. So would you give us like your
Yeah.
version of it, like your what is burnout to you? What does it mean to you?
Yeah. Things get overused, don't they, sometimes?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
things get, yeah, I think, we
yeah,
say burnt out instead of just exhausted because sometimes it's just
yeah,
exhausted. It's not actually burnout, and so I think
yeah,
that's a really good thing. I have a phrase that this is my definition of burnout. If you
yeah.
look it up in the dictionary, it won't say this, but I have a definition I like to use because I think it
Yeah.
makes sense to people in our industry. And so I describe burnout. I have to think about this now, Maddie. If you watch it on YouTube, I've got my fingers up so I can remember it. It's total physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion with, well, I say it like this as well, and spiritual exhaustion. But what that really means is totally physically exhausted, totally mentally exhausted, totally emotionally exhausted with a dollop of hopelessness attached. That's the
Okay.
spiritual exhaustion is how I used to describe it. And now I sort of say it's more like a dollop of hopelessness on top because
Hmm.
I think it's that feeling where hope has gone as well. So you're
Hmm.
exhausted, but you've also lost hope that things can
Yeah,
be different. And I think that's
yeah,
when we hit real problems,
yeah,
because you can feel, and it's not to say that mental exhaustion isn't burnout, it is. But I think that the bottom end of it is when we really start to lose hope because then we stop trying to get ourselves out of it as well because we think it's pointless.
yeah.
Does that make
That makes
sense?
perfect
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, and I think it's like it sounds like what I'm hearing is it's the present moment, but also that like there isn't a future for this, like that this is your life now, rather than going, oh, I'm absolutely
Yeah.
knackered today, and I'll be fine tomorrow.
Yeah, a little bit of sleep's going to sort this out. And sometimes a little
Hmm.
bit of sleep does sort it out, but a bit of sleep doesn't sort burnout out. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about burnout is that when you're truly burnt out, you lose the capacity. We sort of say the capacity to play. So you often lose the capacity to have fun. And sort of that's like adult play, like um, when you're so stressed, you lose the capacity to have fun. And when kids are stressed, they lose the capacity to play. But how that also looks in adults is you lose the capacity to use your imagination. And what's worrying about that is when you've lost the capacity to use your imagination, it means you can't see a better future for yourself. You can't imagine what a better job looks like or a better life. So you don't try and get one. And
Yeah,
that's when people get stuck because they stop trying, they give up. And then, depression follows, that sort of
yeah,
thing. I want to sort of explain how burnout will eventually lead to mental health problems. And that's one of
yeah,
the
yeah. Because
reasons we lose hope
yeah,
and vision in a way,
Yeah.
can't see things being any different. It's like one of the reasons I left the hair industry originally to become a therapist was because I was so burnt out and I couldn't imagine it would be different. So I thought, well, I might as well leave. I didn't
Yeah.
think it could be different. Do you see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like I think that when you're in a good state, like when you're feeling well, hope comes from creative thinking because you can imagine, like
Yes.
exactly what you say in imagination.
Yeah.
You can do your
Yeah.
vision board. You can be like,
Yeah.
I can really picture this. I might not have it. I might not know how to even get there, but you can vision it and be creative around it.
Yes.
Whereas I totally see how the lack of creative thinking equals hopelessness. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yes.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that
And it's why
definition.
I like the word hope. I know when I feel hopeful about my
Hmm.
future that my mental health is going well. And when I lose
Yeah.
hope about my future, that's a really big sign to me that something needs to change.
Well,
Yeah.
my
So
next
it's
question
all
actually was
so
going to
tied.
be,
Oh, go on.
yeah, I was going to say my next question was going to be, what are the warning signs? Like, what are if someone's feeling, what might someone be feeling now that they might not know is on the path a few steps away from burnout?
Yeah. And so I have a few things that I say about this. I think it's that there's that feeling that you're on the hamster wheel, and you're just lurching from one crisis to another as well. You're putting out fires and you live in a very now mentality because you're literally putting out the fire in front of you. And really, it's interesting because we can relate this to last week, which doing yourself a future solid. You can't do yourself a future solid when you're burnt out. You're too tired, too knackered. You haven't got the energy to think about
Yeah.
tomorrow and next week. You're in survival mode and you're surviving the day. And so that would be a definite big sign. But earlier in the path, I say this a lot: joylessness is a sign when you're not having a good time anymore. You're not fun anymore. I used to say this like, I used to be fun, me. Where did she go? I'm so
Yeah.
unfun because everything's become very serious because it's stressful and you're worried about the future. And so that, when someone says, do you want to come out dancing? You're like, as if I've got time or energy or even want to do that. So you
Yeah.
lose this sort of fun side of yourself and you become quite joyless. Um, it's things like feeling resentful. So, as a hairdresser, you might start resenting your clients. What are they doing mithering me for their hair done? That thing of why are people
Yeah.
contacting me? I remember feeling
Yeah.
scared of my phone for it was a good few years period when I was hairdressing where I was scared of my phone because nobody ever messaged me to say, how are you? Only people messaged me to ask me for something, which was their right
Yeah.
as clients. But
Yeah.
I had so little to give. Even someone asking to book a set of highlights in, I was like, stop it. But if they did
Yeah.
stop it, that would have brought on other problems. But I felt like I had nothing left to give. I was like, so I didn't want to answer my phone because I would have to give energy if I did. And so it was that sort of feeling of resenting really normal stuff, resenting your job, resenting your clients, resenting your friends who've got more freedom, starting to feel bad feelings towards people living a nice life. All those sort of
Yeah.
signs start to show up. What else? One of the things I think this really only relates to people who work for themselves, um, is blaming other people for how busy you are. And this is massive for me. Like, this is how I notice I'm getting burnt out now. I still use this one as my main indicator, but if you're busy beyond belief and you're freelance, you caused that chaos. I'm a self employed educator,
Yeah.
and if I start blaming other people for how busy I am, I caused that chaos.
Yeah.
And so I think when you start being like, it's the client's fault I'm so busy, or I'm like, it's all those salons who asked me to do workshops. That's why I'm so busy. It's not, it's mine. But when I start trying to put that responsibility onto other people,
Yeah.
that's a sign that I'm burnt out because I'm looking to
Yeah.
blame and
The
instead of
blame game.
looking at the fact
Yeah.
that I caused that chaos. And so, yeah, I think
Yeah.
they're really good ones to sort of pay attention to up front.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
sounds like a real when you say the hamster wheel, it feels like it's such a catch-22 because you're in this, you can't forward think, you can't creative think, you're blaming everyone else, so you're not really looking at it objectively, you're not looking at it in a strategic or like in a way that's
Mm-hmm.
empowered and with autonomy. It's just like, this is happening to
Yeah.
me, it's someone else's
Yeah.
fault somehow. I can't get out of
Yeah.
it. This is my life now. I'm
Yeah.
jealous of these people. I'm resentful of these people. It is a real stuckness,
Yeah.
and it feels like it's like you're at the bottom of this well. That's what I kind of imagine, that
Yeah.
you're by yourself, stuck at
It's
the
the
bottom.
big
Like, how do
pit,
I get
isn't
out?
it? And it's too
Yeah,
hard. It's too hard to even
yeah,
get out, isn't it? And I think I think it really needs to be said that some people are living really hard, struggling, burnout lives, and actually the chaos isn't all of their own making.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
not. They've got,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know, unsupportive families, unsupportive partners, they're divorced and their partner's causing chaos in their life and, making really contributing to that. And so I don't want to sort of put it out there that if you're burnt out, it's all your fault, because that's
Mm-hmm.
not always true. But in the case of
Mm-hmm.
an overbooked hairdresser, yeah, that's your fault,
Yeah,
But if
yeah,
you're
yeah,
doing that because you're short of money, I understand that, but there's other things to attend to then. You know what I mean? But what I
yeah,
don't want to sort of say is that it's all your fault and add to that, because it's not. There's things that really can contribute externally, like ex-partners who are just being difficult. But
mm-hmm.
cost of living crises and the government decisions, these all actually impact people's burnout, because when
Yeah,
people are worried about money, they make decisions that are not good for their health. So there are
yeah,
external factors that are contributing to people being burnt out as well. It's
yeah,
messy. And
yeah.
it's just
Super messy
massive,
in
really,
this.
to think about.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are things
and
within our control, Maddie, and then there's things that aren't.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's like, I obviously make quite a bit of content around the fault and fault versus responsibility. So I'm like very mindful of when I would use the F word, which is not particularly often, but it's more when you say like what's in your control. That's where I focus like all my energy is. Like, I can't control that there's a
Yeah,
cost of living crisis. I can't control how, I'm locked into this mortgage and my interest has gone up, but I am
yeah,
responsible for like, okay, how do I make this work for me and navigate it and all
yeah,
of those things. But
yeah,
I totally get how if you're in a state of burnout, it feels like everything's
yeah,
happening to you and you just have no choice.
yeah,
Like, maybe, or you just
yeah.
don't see that choice anymore.
It's
Yeah.
too much to think about, actually, because when you're mentally exhausted, you don't have the mental bandwidth to even take that
Mm.
on,
Yeah.
because you're just
Yeah. Yeah.
surviving your days. So
Yeah.
it's hard. Burnout's
Yeah.
really hard.
And even that word like surviving, that's it, isn't it? It's like you're in survival mode. Like, you are just raw dogging through your day, and if you can get to bed that
Yeah,
day, you're like, okay, whew, I did
yeah,
it, but now I have
yeah,
to do another day. Yeah.
without any major crisis. And I think what you'll hear hairdressers say a lot is, when the pandemic hit, I got time to think.
Yeah.
I realized I was on the hamster wheel. I was just
Hmm.
surviving. And with that space, a lot of people made decisions to change their lives. And so
Yeah.
that was one of the things that was useful about the pandemic, is that this was created for a lot of people. But it's very difficult people find it difficult to create that,
Yeah.
without a
Well,
pandemic,
yeah.
just to go, I'm
Yeah.
just going
Yeah.
to have a few months off and have a think about my life.
Yeah.
People didn't get that, but so many hairdressers started to reflect on how unhappy they were. And the hamster wheel is the phrase that people said to me constantly about that. I got off
Yeah.
it and had a look around and thought, what am I doing? And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's interesting.
and I think this is why I like to physically get out of the business as well. So like, me and my friends do our little like couple of days in the lakes, and obviously it's like very privileged to be able to do that or afford to do that, and even like going to a cafe to do some work, like just getting out of the physical
Yeah,
space where you usually work, I think can be so helpful to just step, zoom out of that forest or that hamster wheel,
yeah,
whatever the well,
yeah.
whatever it feels like for
But
you.
on a much smaller scale, I encourage people all the time who are in my sort of world to go for walks on their own in silence. no
Yeah,
podcast, no music. And I
I
think
can't do that
that's a
yet.
free, I do it when I go for walks. I never take podcast. I talk to you a lot, but otherwise I do it in quiet because
Yeah.
it helps me get some space and have a think. And I think if you're really burnt out, at creating those pockets that you can just have a little think is brilliant. You know, those small little
Yeah.
things will make a difference.
Super helpful. How how bad can it get? And like how, I'm mindful to use the word like functioning because it's again it's a bit of an overused or maybe misconstrued word, but like I imagine you probably see some people who are incredibly burnt out yet are still somehow, some way like getting through this day and they're running a business and running a
Yeah,
household and being a
yeah.
parent. And how bad can you see it getting before the point of like, or really what is the worst point of burnout, and where do people get to where they still can do the day-to-day things?
I think it depends on people's levels of support and stuff like that, how quickly things can go downhill. But it also depends on how much people are pushing themselves. But I mean, I think how bad can it get? I know people who were hospitalized with burnout. You know,
Wow.
I can think of two people off the top of my head who've talked to me about, um, they've talked to me publicly on 5 questions about being hospitalized with burnout, you know, and so that's where it can go. I know people in my personal life who have stopped having the function to be able to walk. They had to relearn how to
Jeez.
walk because their burnout was, their body just started shutting down and saving energy and capacity, and they stopped being able to take care of themselves, and then they had to relearn how to take care of themselves. But some of that was walking, you know, but they also had to
Wow.
learn how to dress themselves again and how to feed themselves and even remember to feed themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like people ended up having to be fully taken care of because their mental capacity collapsed under the
Yeah.
stress that they were under. You know, so it can get really bad. Is the upside, is not the upside, is the main point of that. You know, at the other end of burnout, you've just got really fed up, don't want to go to work anymore, not enjoying your life. You know, I think that's basic burnout. But if you keep doing that for long enough, it will just get worse and there will be symptoms. It will bleed into your life, you know, because when you come joyless, that starts affecting your relationships. And then you start withdrawing from people, then your mental health declines even more. So, you know, it doesn't get better. You've got to make
Yeah.
changes to have burnout get better, because it isn't just being tired. It's
Yeah.
really living in a way that's beyond your capacity to cope with for too long. And the longer you
Yeah.
do that, the bigger the consequences will be. And the harder you push, the bigger the consequences will be. And so, yeah,
Well,
they're
I
my
was I was
experiences of that.
I was just thinking there's a couple of people that I know who, or that I work with, or that I know personally, who are like, when you said push, it just reminded me where they're like, I'm just going to push through, or I just know that it'll get a little bit quieter then, and it never does. And there are people I know who I would call them chronically burnt out, um, and it looks really obvious from the outside that it's like this is a repeated thing, this is a pattern, this keeps happening, it does not get better. It doesn't get better, um, and some of those stem from this maybe feeling of I have to do everything myself. I see that like can,
Hmm.
and that was going to kind of be my next question, is what can contribute to it, because I see for me it was worse when I was a control freak about my business and I didn't want to ask for help, and I was like I do everything myself, and now I'm so much better at that. But that for me was a real contributor. Um,
Hmm.
Trying to do everything in a business that really requires maybe like four, five, six people. And that's
Yeah.
what I see in others as well. So like, what would you say contributes to it? And again, for people behind the chair, for anyone listening.
I think exactly what you're saying, that the in sort of the therapy world, we call it fierce independence. And it's where your sense of doing things yourself and being independent actually starts to sort of bang you over the head. You know, your level of determination to be completely independent is, it can be brilliant, but then starts to be a hindrance. And so I have I've I'm a fiercely independent person
Yeah.
to my detriment. We talked
Yeah.
about this in therapy a lot. And so I know that that is a thing for me. I have to keep my eye on. And so I am inclined to do everything myself, but I have my eyes on that these days, and I've got a VA and things. And so it's better. But yeah, that sort of feeling where you're like, no one can do it as good as me. You know, when you hear yourself say things like that. Other things that can contribute to it would be people with big goals and big dreams, you know, people who expect a lot from themselves and are very like pushing things forward all the
It's
time.
me.
And they think rest is weakness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Oh my
hear
God.
them say things like, Margaret Thatcher survived on 4 hours sleep a night, did she now? You know, I don't even want to start with that. But when people say things like that, I just think you're going to come a cropper. When that's your idea of super, and what you're aiming for is someone who can survive on 4 hours a night, and this sort of slight belief that they're superhuman and the rules don't apply to them. You know, like it's kind of a mentality, you know, of being proud of surviving on really low levels of sleep. And you know what I mean? It's just that slight superhuman thing. People have traits of that, and I think that sort of thing, when you expect too much of yourself, is how I would summarize that. People who expect too much of themselves and ignore their humanity, ignore human functional needs, eating,
Yeah.
sleeping,
Yeah. I
connection. You
feel
know,
very
do you know what I
seen.
mean?
Yeah. I have this like terrible thing, and I kind of know roughly where it comes from. So I have big abandonment stuff. So I have a very big independence, especially financial independence. And I'm like, I will not rely
Yeah,
on another person. But I
me
also have
too.
the superhuman thing where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't expect anyone else to do this, but I could do this. Like I'm.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm better than someone, but like I think I just have this warped view of like my capacity that it's like extreme.
Yeah, I think about you as someone who's like, I found this hack that now means I can do
I
more.
can do more. Yeah,
You know,
like I'll be the
that's
person.
that sort of thing.
I worked out the other day that I can read a Kindle on a treadmill. That's very on brand for me. It's like, how can I do 6 things at the same time? Because I only
Yes.
have 24 hours and I must maximize them.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
All of that sort of thing. Not seeing that rest is part of the process. You know, rest is absolutely part of the process of being a creative person and a business person and a human being, to be honest. But, you know,
Yeah.
when people have got big goals and big dreams, they get scared of saying no because they think the opportunities will never come back. And so I think it can really come down to not respecting your body and your mind,
Yeah.
and not really taking that to consideration.
And
Yeah.
I loved what you said on the episode about the self-care stuff was you can be more productive by taking care of yourself. Like the rest leads to productivity. And I was like, okay, because I know that loads of
Yes.
stuff you talk about is the energy management. That's how it really clicked for me. Um
Yeah. Don't you think you can
this
be
yeah.
busy, Maddie, but like unuseful busy? Like we talk about
Oh
this a
my
lot, don't
gosh,
we?
yeah.
You know, when you're
Yeah.
busy in your business, but it does nothing. You're like faffing around with a
Yeah.
logo or something, or, you know, I don't even know, but just
Yeah.
faffing about, but it's not actually useful, but
It's
it's
just
taking a
total
lot of your
busy
time
work.
when you could have been, it's busy work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So people who get
Yeah.
really, it's a bit like being obsessed with being productive, having
Yeah.
a mindset around that. These sorts of things contribute to burnout. There's a lot of
Yeah.
other stuff that contributes to burnout as well, you know, in that way that it's not always coming from work, it's often coming from home. You know,
That must
it's
be
not
really hard for
always.
people because I think they would just assume, and back to the point of like pointing the finger, it's probably really nice and easy and convenient to go, oh my god, I've got all these clients and I've got all this demand on me and all these people are messaging me and there's like that whole thing. But to then even admit or consider that actually there's maybe some personal life stuff that might be
Yeah, and
factoring in. Mm.
for sure. And I think in my experience coaching people one-on-one, when people come to me burnt out, we'll talk about their work for a bit, and then I will always sort of ask about their home life and things like the division of labor in the house. And there's always this sort of sheepish, well, I do everything conversation often comes out. And so I speak to a lot of people where they're talking to me about being burnt out in their business, but then what I realize is they're taking on all the responsibility of keeping the house going, the kids going, the cleaning. The division of labor is absolutely not fair in their house. And so what's actually contributing to them being burnt out at work is they're using so much of their energy in their home life. They don't have enough energy to bring to the business to keep it going. What I find often is their businesses, they're actually ran well. It's not that they've
Yeah.
not got systems and boundaries. It's not even that. It's that they're not being allowed to show up with enough energy to do their job, because sometimes they have partners who think their job is a hobby.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're not the main breadwinner, sometimes what can happen in relationships is your job is not taken seriously. And so you end up doing more of the house stuff and then not being able to have enough energy to do your job. And people end up burnt out like that. It's not because they've not got systems and boundaries. It's because they're carrying too much of the load of the family.
It's like they're turning up to work with a flat battery or with like 5% battery.
Yes.
There's something that we do inside of Breakthrough, and it's like what I call it the hat collector calculator, and we work out how many jobs you actually do in your business and how much you should be getting paid. Spoiler alert, it's 6 figures usually or more. And it's really interesting
Is this
you say that,
Breakthrough?
because it's inside Breakthrough, and it blows everyone's head open. But also, to kind of add to that, it's like you've got that at work where you are the practitioner, you do the hair, the nails, the lashes, whatever, but you do the admin, the social media, the accounts, stock take, advertising, everything. So it's already that you're doing a bunch of jobs, and how infuriating when your other half is like, oh, you just get to play with nails all day, but actually you were doing 5 jobs. But also to add to that, at home you are now Mary Poppins and the cleaner and the cook and the meal prepping.
It's too many jobs for one. It's too much for one person. It is essentially that. It's too much for one person. And it's interesting, Maddie, I do something in Burnout and Boundaries that's similar, where I get people to write down everything they're responsible for at work. What doesn't happen what doesn't happen without you at work? But then I'm like, what doesn't happen without you at home? And it's like, and this means sometimes people need to have difficult conversations with their partners about, we agreed to this 20 years ago, but life's different now. We need a renegotiation of who does what. And those are, people don't like having those conversations. They would rather work on their business and put some boundaries in and stuff. But there comes a point when that's not enough. And you have to look at the home stuff as well. But it feels easier to think that you're burnt out because of your business. And it's really hard to think that you're burnt out because of the fairness of the division of labor in your relationship. That's very tough for people to have those conversations.
Yeah, and it's like you're fixing a thing that isn't the thing that needs to be fixed, because you're avoiding fixing the actual thing.
Yeah.
And then you're all burnt out because you're fixing stuff.
Then you're like, oh, it's going to be really hard, And so I think often, but I think it doesn't matter how you come to it, but I'm thrilled when people start helping themselves. So if you come to me and, you're like, I'm exhausted at work, and then the conversation goes to, oh, actually, we need a renegotiation at home. Great. Who cares? As long as people are taking steps to look after themselves, it's all good, isn't it? If I don't care how people come to it. I just really like it when people start taking care of themselves and putting some boundaries in. It's a bit like this, isn't it? I thought I needed boundaries at business, but I actually needed boundaries at home. Oh, and that's so much harder. Yeah. It's so much harder.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So it honestly so interesting, and I hope this has been as interesting for you guys listening as it had, like for me hearing that as well. It's just Such a good shift. But I love it. And honestly, you are like the bloody OG of burnout. So anyone who's any
Oh,
of this has
thanks, Maddie.
resonated, you need to get to Haley. Like Haley is the woman to sort you out for this. Um,
Yeah.
I think this takes us very nicely to a little shameless plug, actually. Does it?
Well,
Can we segue it? Casual?
I I think we're going to have to do a little bit of editing. I think that we should put a little bit in at the end about our experience and then the first things people do to get out of burnout, because otherwise I think it needs to end a bit hopeful.
Okay. Lily, take me a little plug for that, please. Thank you. I'm slinking later. The reason I didn't do our experiences is just because I thought we'd done them throughout, but that's fine. So,
Oh, yeah, I just sort
okay.
of thought to myself, I think we just need something a little hopeful at the end.
Yeah.
Do you
Okay.
know what I mean?
Well, okay.
Yeah.
So should I just ask you, like, so we know what it feels like inside, you know, what would you say to someone who's feeling like this? What
Yeah.
would you say next steps? Yeah.
What do
Okay.
we do?
Okay.
Yeah.
And action. So Haley, thank you, because that perspective is mega helpful. We've talked a lot about the things that lead up to it, the warning signs, how it feels when you're in it, things that contribute to it. I'm absolutely certain that everyone listening, or a lot of people listening, something in this will have resonated. What are any just sort of quick steps, just something that people can be doing or thinking about that can start to shift them out of burnout?
It's really simple, actually. Well, it's simple, but it's not easy. What I really talk about when I teach burnout and boundaries, for example, is you need a lot, like, when you sort of describe being at the bottom of the well, and I sort of talk about having no imagination. You can't even see a future. You've got to get enough energy to get the will to get out of the well. You've got to get enough energy that your brain starts working again, that you can start to see a different future. And so for me, the first thing people have got to work on is figuring out how they're going to claw some energy back. And essentially what that really means for people that are burnt out is, what can I stop doing now so I can create some space to start thinking, to start strategizing and having a bit more hope, and just even that space for imagination of, maybe I could get a different job. Maybe I could stop doing that service. But you've got to have the space to start getting you the things to think again. And so, one of the first things that happens in Burnout and Boundaries, for example, is we're like, what can you put down? What can you stop? How are we going to claw energy back? Can you have a conversation with your partner? How can we start getting you some energy back so you can do this work? Because you can't do it otherwise. So for me, it's all really about thinking about, where are you using energy that you could stop? That's the very first step that I do to get people out of burnout, so that they can start to feel hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I said this to you, but one of my best friend Nikki shared a phrase with us ages ago that was like, when you feel like you're juggling balls, remember that some of them are glass and some of them are rubber. You can drop some of them. And I was like,
Oh,
some will
yes.
bounce and some will smash.
Very
Like,
nice.
yeah,
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 exactly that. All of that. And I always say it's better if you put things down rather than let them fall. Because
yeah.
when you
Place
put
them
them down,
somewhere
it's more
safe.
careful. Yeah, I'm going to put that down for a
Yeah,
month is much better than having things fall off your plate, because that's
yeah,
chaos. And then that's just
yeah.
another
Or
fire for you to
avoidance.
put
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Yeah, all
yeah.
of that. And
Amazing.
so, yeah, I just think we've got to look at our energy as the bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks
Well,
for asking me all them questions, Maddie. I bloody love talking about burnout. Oh, I
honestly,
love being asked
yes, the
questions about
best.
burnout. It's my favourite
Speaking of
thing.
burnout, I
Ooh,
think this leads us nicely actually to shameless
have we
plug
got a
time,
really
because we are both,
slick plug?
you know me, I'll segue into the shameless plugs one way or another. So challenges, mine technically started yesterday, so there's still time to join Slay the Day if you are listening on the day or on the week that this comes out. But for you, because yours is around this, isn't it? It's around burnout, so this is like super
Yeah,
timed.
I've got a challenge all about burnout starting on the 16th of January, so in a week,
Brilliant.
and you can sign up now. Sign up now
Yeah,
if
we'll
this
send the
resonated
links.
with you.
Yeah,
Show
everyone's like
notes,
frantically
Instagram
signing up.
bios. Everyone's like, let me
Yeah,
find them show
you
notes.
know it is.
But yeah,
Um,
I've got a challenge that will help with burnout.
Amazing. I might have to come on to that.
Yeah,
So, usual crack, hyper focus. What are you hyper focusing on?
Maddie. I was thinking about yours last week, when you were talking about four in the bed and the daytime TV. And
Obsessed, yeah.
periodically, I tend to do things like this. I watch a bit of daytime TV when I'm having a break. Like I often work on my couch on my laptop, and every now and again I'll think, right, I'm going to eat, and I'll just watch 30 minutes of something mindless. And every now and again, this obsession pops back up, and I'm deep in it again at the moment, which is Judge Judy. I couldn't love
What
her
an
more.
old school. I have not seen her for years and years.
It's on every day, Maddie. It's on every day.
I'm
These
watching the wrong
repeats
channel.
from the 90s. There's so much to love about Judge Judy. The hairdos of the people on trial, like they're so old. It's just like 90s heaven. It's all brown lip liner, nude lips and big layers. It's hilarious. That's really fun. But Judge Judy is like my dream. I feel like I want to be Judge Judy when I grow up. I just think I'd be
I
so
can
good at
see
it.
it. But
I
a
know.
very nice, kind,
And a
non-judgmental
really nice,
Judy.
tough love version, but like some sort of version of that I would just love. I just think
Yeah.
Judge Judy is comedy. And I think about this a lot. I think about Judge Judy a lot because sometimes, when sometimes clients will talk to me about this, but sometimes you see it in Facebook groups and, hairdressers having a moan up about a client. And, she knows me boundaries. And I always think, if you were on Judge Judy, what would Judge Judy say? And if you haven't got a contract,
Yeah.
you've got no leg to stand on. And I think it's that with your boundaries, if you've not put them out there properly, you haven't got a leg to stand on. You can't put them in afterwards. And I think about this all the time.
I
Would
love it.
would you get this past Judge Judy? And if the answer's no, your systems are not good enough. So there's a lot to learn from Judge
Maybe
Judy.
maybe if Netflix are listening, I'm sure you are, just like the government and everyone else. Um, that was a throwback to last week. I'm not like a mad conspiracy theorist, just FYI. If Netflix are listening or any big producers, I think we need a show because I actually think she sits in the middle of us really well. Like she's kind of like our spirit animal. Could someone set us up with a show where we basically kindly judge people on their salon setup
Yeah.
situations? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I would love it so much. Do you remember Mary Porter's, though? She used to do
Oh
this with
yeah,
businesses, didn't she? Oh, I loved it so much. I really like these sort of makeover shows with an element of
yeah,
tough love, but actually do brilliant things. I
yes,
love that sort of thing. Mary
yeah,
Porter was great at that. She did a few hairdressers back in the day.
yeah.
It was
I really
brilliant.
love her, and I feel like I do it accidentally, and then I think I'm not going to say. Obviously, I'm not going to give any unsolicited advice, but that kind of takes me on a nice little segue to mine. Following
Oh,
on from a previous hyper focus about my elevated transitional knitwear, um, basically I'm obsessed with
oh
the
yes.
brand. There's a brand. I'm really conscious about how I buy stuff because I teach sales and marketing and sales psychology, and I'm like, I know I'm being sold to. I'm fully aware of the process, but I find it really interesting to like observe it. So I just
Yes.
got a Facebook ad, and I was like, oh, this looks good. It's a company called Varley. I think they're in the UK, and my
Mm-hmm.
very lovely fleece that I'm wearing on YouTube. If you watch them, you can see. But it was about the experience with them, and this is why I'm a bit obsessed with them. And also, they feel super snuggly. I bought some of their socks, which is the most like luxurious socks I've ever put on my feet.
I remember you
But
talking about Varley before.
yeah, I'm fairly sure I'll have some sort of code which I'll put in the show notes and be abundant in discount codes. But experience wise, so obviously they did ads, so I'd never heard of them. So straight away, awareness, I'm aware. I got hit with a bunch of other ads. Super nice branding. I bought a bunch of stuff, but they included a handwritten postcard with actually quite a lot of writing on, and it was like, "Hi Maddie, thank you so much for your first order," like what they were about, like the values. And I thought, I'm in. I am hook, line and sinker in. Yeah, and they just made it really lovely. Anyway, I've bought some more stuff because I was like, well, I'm part of the community now. So you're going to see me doing like hashtag unveiling, being a little knitted influencer.
Well, I'll be looking at this afterwards. Is it a British company?
I think so, yeah. Also, we love Vinted, and there is some stuff from there on Vinted, and it also holds its value very well. So if you buy it, you can swing it on Vinted later and probably make it, it doesn't go for cheap. So
yeah, interesting. Well, that'll be my new hyper focus, I think.
Enjoy your new little postcard.
It's the season. Well, it's the season to buy jumpers.
It's still snuggly season, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you so much. This is so your expertise, and I could listen to you talk about burnout forever and ever. So thank you so much.
Oh, this was great. Lovely. Love doing this episode, Maddie. Brilliant.
And I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
All right. Ta-ra.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments.
Please support those who support us, and check out Timely, who we recommend as our favourite booking system for you. New customers can get 50% off their first 3 months with the code COFFEE50.